Good afternoon, friends. So today we will be covering the sixth Rafa Live session on this Saturday. And on behalf of Research Foundation, I welcome all of you to this program. Today, not only I'm going to present the topic that has already been announced, but I'm going to also announce the new ways that the Research Foundation will now reach out to all of us, all of you. So the Research Foundation has now a virtual channel. So this is called the Research Foundation or RFHHA, the RAFA Virtual, and this RAFA Virtual channel has two broad stream of programs. One is called the Research Foundation Live, and the other one is called the Research Foundation's Learners Portal. Many of you are already aware about the Learners Portal. Let me briefly cover what these two streams address. The RAFA, the Research Foundation Live, is the virtual live short format once a week Saturday program, which is on every Saturday at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. This is a forum for interaction and exchanges among the members of fraternity and to promote scholarship, ideation, and amity. This is for all professionals. Anybody could join using the link that we circulate widely. And you're also welcome to invite your friends and colleagues who share the common interests. This Rafa Live will have three different kind of events. One is the live session that will happen every Saturday at 3 p.m. The one that you are now participating in. Beginning this month, we will also be having one national grand round once a month and international grand round once in a period of 3 months. The national grand round will be in the both the grand rounds will be in the domain of healthcare and hospital administration, and will also cover the domains that overlap with other specialties or other domains in the medical sciences. The national grand round will be on every third Saturday of the month, and the timing will be same at 3 p.m. For the international grand round, we will announce the date and the timings. The Rafa Learners Portal has been in existence since 1st June 2020 this year, and many of you have already attended programs on the Rafa Learners Portal. This is a virtual, self-paced learn online forum or an online platform where you can join the hosted courses. The learners can select from number of courses and subscribe to enhance the knowledge and learning. These courses are available 24/7 for specified durations, which is different from each course. Typically, a master class is of 14 days duration, and a master course could be from 4 to 6 weeks duration depending on the content of the program. At present, we have three master classes and one master course which is currently available. The and We are in the process of adding courses uh, in coming months. So on an average, so far we have been adding 1 to 2 courses per month, and we hope to pick up the speed and add more courses as we go along. So this was about the Research Foundation or RAFA Virtual, that segment that we have launched beginning this month. Now we will come to today's discussion on the analytical tools. So now we come to the today's subject of analytical quality tools, and we will focus on RCA and also cover many other tools. So the analytical tools are used for the purpose of analysis to detect something. So what do we try to detect when we use the analytical tools? We try to detect a cause. So we may have an adverse event and we want to detect the cause of that adverse event. We may want to detect the trend. So we may have a trend of infections or incidents or certain kind of activities, for example hand washing trends or hand hygiene trends. So for that purpose also we need to do the analysis, and these analytical tools are used for this purpose. Then we may need to find association between two disparate entities or two disparate pieces of data. For example, we want to find out the hand hygiene compliance with the consumption of the consumption of the hand rub solution. So this kind of association also can be found by using the analytical tools. And we sometimes want to detect the effects of a particular action that we have taken. So we may have implemented certain corrective and preventive action, and those actions we want to know what is the effect. So the effect can be found out by using the analytical tools, and many times the analytical tools are used for prioritization. So for example, we may have found multiple reasons which are attributable to a particular kind of problem, for example medication management or medication administration errors, and then we can use tools to prioritize as to the number of reasons that we have found, which ones to be addressed first and which ones can be deferred for a certain period of time. So this is the requirement of prioritization. So these are the broad purposes for which we use analytical tools. So let us now cover the tools, and the first one is called the root cause analysis. The root cause analysis is a group of tools for identifying the underlying cause or multiple causes responsible for an adverse event. So as the term says, the root cause analysis is done after an adverse event has already happened. So it is a retrospective analysis. So the Journal of Healthcare Compliance in 2005 defined the root cause analysis as a systematic process or designed for investigating what, how, and why something happened, and to figure out how to prevent the same thing from happening again. So if you look at this definition carefully, it does not address who. That means who is the person responsible for the adverse event is not addressed by the root cause analysis. So root cause analysis is done for investigating a cause of an incident, and it generates effective corrective actions. It is important to understand why this root cause analysis is being done. So the valid purposes are to protect safety or to improve quality, and to some extent to get up and running quickly. For example, if there is a sentinel event, and while we are in the process of addressing all the causative factors contributing to that sentinel event, we may need to do a quick RCA so that we figure out what are the main points or the main action areas, and we quickly address them so that we can start functioning all over again. The third reason many times used for root cause analysis is finding someone to blame. This is not a valid reason for doing the root cause analysis. So this particular diagram or this picture shows that there an adverse event is like the visible part of the problem, which may be compared to a symptom of a disease, and then we may have a first level cause, a second level cause, and a root cause. The first and the second level causes are called proximate causes, that means the immediate causes, and the root cause is the one that fundamentally is responsible for the problem that is visible in the form of an adverse event. So for example, in the equipment failure, the common root cause analysis recommendations can be training, counseling, procedure revision, and repair. There can also be approach to fix and forget, which means we, for example, in an equipment failure, we simply repair that particular piece of equipment which led to an adverse event in this instance, and we do not address the broad problems of maintenance, calibration, and the systemic issues. Then the problem is only going to recur because we have not addressed the root cause. The other findings in a root cause analysis, or other common findings in a root cause analysis, can be the human errors, and this typically prompts us to fix the person, where we either fire a person or we punish a person, and this is definitely something which does not work, because we have to look at the systemic causes of the root of the adverse event rather than looking at peoples and individuals who can be blamed. So the most common approach to root cause analysis, which is evidently wrong, is to fix, fire, and forget. These three ways of addressing an adverse event actually does not work. So what we do is, we in the root cause analysis, we look at performance shaping factors. So these are the factors that contribute to the adverse event, and we have to be sure that we have whether we have addressed all of these in our root cause analysis. So these factors can be the organizational factors, they can be the which can be the work environments, the standard operating procedures, the equipment and the staffing, supervision and HR policies. There can be the task characteristics. For example, the task resources, the equipment, availability of consumables, a particular kind of equipment, functionality of an equipment, availability of trained staff and maintenance, or they can be the elements of task environment. And the environment is means that the condition within which the equipment and the processes are being carried out or tasks are being carried out. The task environment will also include the PPE, the protective equipment that the people are supposed to use. There can be personal factors which have to do with the training and the past experiences of individuals in performing those particular tasks. And there can be situational stressors. Now, situational stressors are those temporary factors which are present at that time when an adverse event has happened. They are not the factors which are continuously present, and they may disappear after the adverse event has happened. So, a typical stressor can be the sudden increased workload, or a sudden change in the work circumstances or task characteristic over which the people who are performing that task or the patients may not have any control. Unless all these are addressed, the recurrence cannot be prevented. So, for situational stresses, we need to have some element of anticipation, and for other things, the other factors come out of root cause analysis. So the root cause analysis tools are the fishbone diagram. So let us quickly look at the fishbone diagram. So this is how it looks, typically like a fishbone. It is also known as Ishikawa chart or Ishikawa diagram. And let us see an example. So here is an example of increased infection rate. And this increased infection rate could be the result of factors which are attributable to the physicians, to the nurses, to patients, to information systems, to clinical actions or the clinical procedures, and to the surveillance. And all these set of factors are recorded or noted in a shape like this. And then we add the findings of the root cause analysis. So the physician factors could be the hand hygiene, the reporting incentives, the lack of standard protocols. The nursing related factors could be hand hygiene training, which is unclear, lack of reporting incentives. The patient related factors, similarly, there can be many information related factors that the certain type of information is not available, or there can be clinical factors which are related to a particular test or a particular procedure, and there can be surveillance related factors relating to the surveillance protocol or surveillance protocol audits or surveillance how the surveillance are being implemented. So these factors have been are identified and recorded like in a diagram like this, and then these have to be prioritized. Obviously, we cannot address all of them in one go, so we prioritize and we put them in certain categories. For example, lack of reporting incentives could be clubbed or could be listed under the category called the cultural issues or the patient safety issues. And then we can also identify the ones which are on priority. So this which needs to be addressed on priority. The other tool is called a process mapping. So a process mapping essentially creates a workflow diagram, also known as a flow chart. This creates a clearer understanding of how a process works and what are the parallel processes that work. So this helps us understand the a particular flow of work. A variety of flow chart is called a swim lane diagram, and this picture makes it abundantly clear. So in this picture there are 5 or 6 vertical columns, and each of them belong to a particular domain. So the first one is the administration, the second one is the IT systems, the third one is the multidisciplinary team, the fourth one is nurses, then doctors, and then the physician care or coordinators or the case coordinators or the floor coordinators. So typically a flow of patient care, or in a patient care process, multiple actions are carried out by multiple people. So a swim lane diagram puts or it brings clarity as to who is doing which part of the flow chart. So using a swim lane diagram, we can very clearly see who is responsible for performing which part of the action relating to a particular uh, workflow or a particular process. Then there is a method called 5 whys. So here we ask the question why repeatedly till such time we reach a root cause. So example of a patient fall. So we can ask the first question, why did the patient fall? So the answer could be that it was a slippery floor and the patient was an old age patient. So the next question could be why the floor was slippery. So it was wet. And why a old age patient went to bathroom alone? Because there was no attendant. Why it was wet? Because the housekeeper cleaned it but left it wet. Now here there could be two issues, that the housekeeper was supposed to dry the floor and then leave it, or he was supposed to clean it in such a manner or at such a time when it would get the it was off the peak use time, and then at that time the floor gets time to dry up. Why did he leave it wet? So there can be answers to this question. So like this we try to find the root cause. This is one method of finding a root cause. Next tool is called the Pareto's chart. So Pareto's chart is a tool that is essentially used for prioritization purposes. So this is based on the Pareto's law, which is the 80-20 rule, and the 80-20 rule means that 80% of the problems are result of 20% of the factors. So it is also, in other words, called a vital few, which means of all the causes that we find out by using a root cause analysis, there will be few which will be responsible for large quantum of outcome. So let us look at an example. So here is the example of a Pareto's chart. So if you read this chart, it is about the types of medication error in a study in a particular hospital, and a total of 430 errors were found, and these errors have been categorized into 12 categories, which are noted on the horizontal axis of this graph, beginning from the most common error, which is the dose missed, and the least common error, which is the unauthorized drug being used. On the vertical axis of the graph, there are two bits of information. One is the frequency, which is recorded from 0 to 100, and the other one on the right side is the cumulative percentage, which is again recorded from 0% to 100%. Now, if you see, the most common error is the dose missed, which has happened 92 times out of 430. Next is the wrong time, which has happened 83 times, and then there is the wrong dose, and so on. Now, once we have arranged all the errors in the descending order of frequency, like it is shown in the graph, then we plot a graph which shows the cumulative total. So the first plot and the orange, sorry, and the maroon colored line, which the with the square points, shows the cumulative percentage of the errors. So the first point in the maroon curved line is 20%, and if you see, 92 is roughly 20% of 430. Similarly, 83 is also roughly 20%. So the second dot or second maroon square falls at 40, which is the 20 plus 20. The third one is 76, which is little less than 20. So 40 gets added with little less than 20. So the third dot is at a point which is slightly below 60. Likewise, you keep adding and you get a curved line, which is the cumulative percentage of the errors. And using this line, this curved line, we look at the point of 80%. So at 80%, we draw a horizontal line, and in this graph, it is a green colored line, which is the 80% cutoff line. So anything which is below that, which means the first four maroon dots belonging to first four types of medication errors, are the ones which contribute to 80% of total errors. And by this, we have uh, prioritized that we can achieve 80% correction in the medical errors by addressing these four problems. So this is essentially a prioritization tool which helps us prioritize the number of prioritize the issues to address in a particular adverse event. Next, we come to analysis after the RCA. The next one is analytical tool is called the FMEA, which is the failure modes and effects analysis. Now, it is a systematic. So, it is a systematic method of examining a process prospectively for possible ways in which failure can occur, and then redesigning the process to eliminate the possibility of failure. to stop a failure before it harms or to minimize the consequences of that failure. This is the definition from the Joint Commission. So this was started in 1940s by the US military in their missile development program, and it is a step-by-step approach for identifying all possible ways in which a particular product can fail. Subsequently, this was also applied to the services and processes. So we can read it like this, that we identify all possible ways in which a particular process can fail, and therefore we anticipate the failures. So the failures are prioritized according to how serious their consequences are and how frequently they occur and how easily they can be detected. So the purpose of FMEA is to take actions to eliminate or reduce the failures, starting with the highest priority ones. So let us see an example. So here I have used an example of sample transportation from the sample collection room in the hospital to the lab where the samples will be subsequently tested. Now this is a rather crude example, essentially to demonstrate the use of FMEA in a short presentation like this. So we don't have much time really to explain in great detail. So I've used a very simple example and which will demonstrate how it is done. So once we analyze the process of sample transportation, let us see what are the steps. So in this, the first step is collection from the ward or the sample collection room. Then the samples are placed in an open tray. They are carried by hand by an aide to the lab. They are collected from the ground floor room, and the person carrying the samples walks 50 meters. Then he climbs the stairs or uses the lift to go to the first floor. Then again walks 20 meters to the lab. Then he negotiates a narrow door which is the entry to the lab and then deposits the sample in the lab. So this is in short a process of sample collection that is happening in the hospital. So let us anticipate where all the errors can happen. So these are the three places that I have identified for the purpose of explaining how the FMEA is done. So the three places where the failure can happen is the first one, that the samples are placed in the open tray. So if the person trips or slips or falls, then all the samples will fall on the ground, and the glass tubes or the containers containing the samples might break. So this will lead to destruction of samples, and this will be a serious failure in the sample transportation process. Similarly, when the person is using the stairs or the lift to go to the first floor, there also it is possible that the person might slip and then the samples might fall. Thirdly, when the person negotiates the door of the lab, again because it is narrow, so it is possible that the tray will fall and the samples will get destroyed, and the person may also get injured in the process. So these are the possible ways this is how the FMEA works, and find out the possible ways in which a particular process can fail. Now that we have identified the samples, the failures, which means number one is that the sample might fall and the containers might break and the sample will get destroyed. The person might get injured, and there is a narrow door which can be the source of the trouble. So once we've identified these, we can take corrective actions and then provide the measures which will mitigate these failures. So the first measure could be that the person gets a enclosed sample container box where the samples will be safe. So even if he slips or trips or falls, then the samples will not get destroyed. They will be safe. The person, when he is walking up the stairs or he is using the lift, there can be certain safety measures en route, so the person doesn't slip or trips or falls, and the samples are not destroyed and the person is not injured. And lastly, we could widen the door of the lab or maybe have a separate entry and a separate exit to the lab, which will facilitate a smooth entry and will obviate the possibility of accidents. So this is how the FMEA works. The benefits of FMEA are that it anticipates and eliminates the problems. It is multidisciplinary in nature, so you involve multiple people in analysis. It seeks inputs from the sharp end, which means it seeks inputs from the frontline workers who are responsible. So in our sample collection process example, we would obviously interact with the person who's carrying the sample to find out in what all ways the process might fail, and therefore the inputs are collected from the sharp end, and the sharp end is where the work is actually happening, the person carrying the sample in this example. And then there is a system. This is a systematic method of improvement. The challenges are that it might be resource intensive, so it might require effort, time, and trained people to do this. Now let us contrast and compare the FMEA and the RCA. So the RCA is retrospective and reactive, while the FMEA is prospective and anticipative or proactive. The RCA looks at why and what and who. The FMEA might look at, or FMEA definitely looks at what if. So it is looking at possibilities. The RCA looks at how the harm can be avoided and the in future, and the FMEA looks at how the harm can be prevented. And both are systematic. They need involvement of people and they need open discussion. So this is about the FMEA and RCA. The next analytical tool is the run chart, and the run chart has multiple benefits. So these benefits are it helps depict how well or poorly a process is performing over time. It helps determine when changes are truly improvements by displaying a pattern of data that you can observe, and give direction on improvement and information about the value of particular changes. So here is the example of a run chart which shows the infection rate in ward 6, and the vertical axis of the graph shows the percentage of infection rate and infection rate in percentage, and the horizontal axis shows the timeline from January to December. And you can see that in the month of June there is May-June there is a sharp drop in the infection rate in terms of percentage, which comes close to the median line, and over a period of next 6 months it goes down to the goal, which is below 2%. So this graph or this run chart very clearly and visually demonstrates the point of change and improvement, and this is very helpful in demonstrating that improvement is actually effective, and conversely it will also demonstrate whether the improvement is working or not. Then the next variety is called the control chart. So control chart is a graph used to study how a process changes over time, and the data are plotted in the time order. Without going into too much of the text that is written on the slide, which will obviously be shared with you, let us look at the example. So here is uh, an example of the control chart is the Levy-Jennings control chart, or LJ chart, that is very commonly used in the internal quality control in the labs. So in the IQC, the Levy-Jennings chart or the control charts are used, and here is the example. So this is how a control chart looks, and the table shows the QC data of the serum cholesterol. So for every biochemistry analyzer, we get the control samples, and we use the control samples for conducting the quality control or the QC testing or the internal quality control testing in the lab before every day it is done. So this is the data for 30 days for serum cholesterol, and day 1 the reading was 250, day 2 255 likewise, and it goes on to day 30 where the reading was 264. Now, when this is plotted on a graph like this, if you see the graph, there is an average which is 250, and the data points are plotted, and which shows that it is on the either side of the graph. The dotted red lines show the standard deviation, and typically a third standard deviation is called the on either side is called the upper and the lower control limit. So if it crosses that control limit, obviously it is the outlier and needs to be corrected. Even when it does not cross, when there is a tendency to continuously be on one side of the median, this is the point where the intervention is required, and this is not the time when we need to discuss the how the quality control is done in the lab, but this is just to demonstrate that how a control chart looks and where it is used. So these were some of the examples, and on the Rafa Learners portal, we have several courses where one can learn about the quality in the healthcare system and the hospitals. So we have at present 3 programs which are available for learning. The first one is called the Masterclass Essentials of Continual Quality Management. It covers all the quality tools that are required the analytical quality tools, the statistical quality tools, and the managerial quality tools. And this program also covers the clinical audit and how to apply that in the actual real life setting using a practical example. Then we have a master's course, which is a 6 weeks fixed duration course. It has a start date and an end date. The current master course is starting today, that is the 3rd October 2020, and this is a 6 weeks program divided into 6 modules. So every week there is a module. This covers the quality domains in the entire hospital. So all aspects of hospital functioning from the point of view of quality system is discussed in this course, and this is a rather comprehensive course meant for people who are in the leadership positions and who are leading the quality management in their hospitals, because this is where they will need this understanding of the quality domains and how it applies to various parts of the hospital. For example, how it applies to the clinical processes or to the nursing processes, how it applies to the facility management, how it applies to the HR systems, how it applies to the leadership roles. And we have covered the requirements which are there in the JCI as well as in the NABH accreditation system. We have also covered what is required in the NQAS, that is our India's quality assurance program for the government setup. So this is a rather comprehensive program. And the third program we have is the root cause analysis in healthcare. This program will be available from 14th of November 2020, and we will cover in full detail as to how the root cause analysis is done. The Joint Commission has described or has a particular methodology of conducting the root cause analysis in healthcare setting, which involves 21 steps and also has an elaborate preparation process. We designed this course as a separate course primarily because the root cause analysis is something which is done most frequently in the hospitals. For almost every adverse event, we end up doing the root cause analysis, and therefore it is important for us to learn about the root cause analysis, which is the single most important interventional activity that anybody could learn in the hospital systems. So this is a course which begins on 14th of November. So with this, we come to the end of today's presentation, and I will now take up the questions that have been asked by several people, and let me take these questions one by one. In the meanwhile, those who want this presentation, please share your email IDs in the chat box, and this email, using this, we will forward this presentation to you. You can watch this video on the YouTube channel of the Research Foundation, and the link is regularly shared in the Telegram channel of the Research Foundation. I am sure all of you have received the invitation to join the Telegram channel of the Research Foundation. Please do join, because we share useful resource material on that channel, which is of practical use to all of us in our daily functioning. So while I look at the questions, let me also share that every Saturday we have this program where we cover the topics of importance to all of us. And so a lot of you have asked for the presentations, Stephen Paul, Mr. Deepak Karanam. So this presentation will be will be sent to you. So Dr. Ashok Sharma has asked, of all the tools, which is best and practically applicable in the hospital? Uh, let me state this, that there is no one best tool for the hospital. What we need to look at is that we need to understand the tools and apply the correct tool for the particular kind of problem that we are trying to address. So, for example, if we have an adverse event and then we are trying to dig the reasons why that particular adverse event is there, so we obviously use the root cause analysis. But if there is a requirement to, let us say, prioritize the reasons or prioritize a certain set of actions, then we need to use Pareto's analysis or Pareto's chart. Now it will be difficult to pinpoint as to which tool is the best or the practically applicable. But let me state that the root cause analysis will be the tool that one will be using most often in the hospital setting. The next question, of course, a lot of people have asked for the presentation. So Dr. Ashok Sharma's next question is, in the context of SHCO and the HCO, the commonly used tool. Well, I can only say this, that the tools are not dependent on the accreditation system. They are part of the quality system. Accreditation system is the set of norms or the standards which demands that your quality system must conform to those standards or those norms. Now, the tools are not specific to a accreditation standard; they are specific to quality systems. So these tools are applicable to the SSCO standards, to the HCO standards, to the JCI accreditation system, to the NQAS, any accreditation system. They are not limited to accreditation systems as such. Okay, then the next question is Dr. Madhulika Jain wants the presentation. Yes, it will be sent to you, ma'am. Uh, then let us look at the answers, more questions. So as I am scrolling the presentation, I don't find the chat list. I don't find very many questions in this. Uh, so today's session is we covered the analytical tools, and I'm sure it was beneficial to many of you, and many of you have also stated so that it is beneficial. Thank you very much. Join us again next Saturday at 3 p.m.